So welcome everyone to the Why We Burn Ourselves webinar series here at the Seed of Life Alternative Health Collective in Charleston, South Carolina. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about how to change your self-sabotage habits that affect your physical, mental, and spiritual health. And this is the last part of the series today. So I just want to welcome all of you guys who have joined us, whether live or post-recorded. So welcome to all the self-saboteurs, because we are all here together to change. Don't let anyone tell you they haven't sabotaged themselves before. So just to start things off, if you are live, I'm just going to go over some logistics with you on the webinar. So welcome to Zoom if you've never used it before. We are going to be using this, I believe, more and more often. So number one, can you hear me? If you cannot, please check the volume on your device. I don't know how many Zoom webinars I started with and I couldn't hear people. And it was like, oh, duh. But it's a good one to be reminded of. Can you see the screen? If not, go to chat under participants in the top right corner and please type me a message. If you cannot see or hear anything at any time, make sure you're muted. You should see this on your own screen if you're muted or not. I will be muting everyone for the presentation. And there is a raise your hand option that may be under your more ... or it might be under participants. So depending on your browser, just check that out for me. Also, that's my cell phone number, which I have right next to me during these live webinars, which you can also feel free to text me anything that might come up later, any questions, or even if you want to set up a more individualized session. You want to do some coaching with me. That's what I do. I'm a coach, which you'll find out in a minute. So today we're going to review what we went over in the first and second component of this webinar, and that is, what is self-sabotage? What are the identifiers? So when do we know we're doing it? And then our own patterns of destruction, so what that looks like, because each of us have a slightly different pattern based on our own experience. And today we're going to bring in the concepts of how we sabotage our existence, our physiology, and our health. And last time we went over two of the vital areas of life, of existence. And today we're going to go over the next two. There will be a question and answer following the presentation. So if you have any questions, please jot them down. If you are not live on this presentation, please feel free to email me. The email address will be at the end of the presentation. And again, you can also use that cell phone number. This presentation is recorded. So there I am. I'm Melody Rogers. And here at the Seed of Life Alternative Health Collective, I'm one of the co-founders, but I specifically work in Ayurvedic education. So Ayurveda is the ancient art and science that predates even biblical times, but it's really I like to think of it as the wise beauty of life. So it's the principles that we receive when we actually commune with nature. And today is just a small part of that. I'm also a yoga healer, certified pro healer, which is a certification for health coaching. And I've also been a hair, skin, and body therapist for over 15 years now. So I've seen a lot of this develop in different aspects of that. And I'm also a yoga instructor and a fitness professional. So again, seeing these elements show up from all of these different attributes really, to me, just reinforces the absolute truth of this science. So today we're going to start with, what is self-sabotage? And the definition we're going to be using today is a cycle or pattern of self-destructive actions, self-destructive emotions, and self-destructive mental constraints that we enact based on the glass ceiling parameters we perceive as true. So remember that it's a pattern or a cycle, which is why we can tap into this. It's based off mental constraints. So they are self-induced mental constraints. That doesn't mean we came up with them, but it does mean we accept them as true, that are tied to particular emotions, usually developed from those mental constraints that provoke certain actions. So we can actually dial this backwards by looking at our actions of the patterns. We can then identify what emotions come up with them, and then we can then identify these mental constraints and possibly even where they came from. So how does this affect our existence? Well, it definitely affects our personal success and our personal growth. Any connected relationships that we could have. Our mental state on a regular basis. And our life potential. So this really affects our existence and our ability to exist fully and vibrantly, and really to quantify what is our personal success, what is our growth, what do our relationships look like, what do we want our mental state to be, and what is the potential of this life. So the glass ceiling is a concept from a book by Gay Hendricks called The Glass Ceiling, and it talks about how far we can go or how high we can rise based on the expectations of others that have been bestowed on us about our personal abilities and worth. The story that we tell ourselves why we cannot have what we desire. And the one thing we want to remember about this is that these are untrue. These are misbeliefs about our potential. The other concept that we want to bring in today is that we are limiting our own existence potential with these glass ceilings, with this barrier that perhaps you can see through. Think of it like a window. You're looking out a window, and it's the perceived safety that you can be inside of that window. But yet, there's also that perceived struggle that you can't move beyond it. Maybe you're stuck in it. So these sources of self-sabotage, we talked about this in the first and the second class, but we just want to go over it again. The stories of our past, those that we've learned our potential from. And who are these people? They could be our parents, our grandparents, our guardians, our teachers, those we admired, those we loved, and also those we sought approval from. And interestingly enough, we're not always younger than these people. So that's something to remember, that your self-sabotage patterns can equally come from a person that you're involved with now, as well as the person that you encountered when you were very young and innocent and vulnerable. Because we're all young and innocent and vulnerable in different ways, in different times. And these always impact us. We also want to remember, especially as parents or guardians or teachers, or perhaps those that other people admire or love or look up to or seek approval from, that we are also contributing to these sources of possible self-destructive habits. We want to be really poignantly aware not only of our own, but seeing them in others, especially people that we love and we cherish, and helping them, once we understand this process, you know, this is the real reason I do what I do, to notice these things in myself and then be able to share this with people that I care about, like you guys. And then you get to share them with someone that you care about, and these patterns stop happening. We can change the world one step of awareness at a time. So examples that I've seen throughout my lifetime in myself, I've seen these over and over again. I'm not good enough. That's the big one. It's the big one I hear more than anything. For this person, this relationship, this job, this opportunity to win, to thrive, to live, to have this potential, I'm just not good enough. From a beauty industry perspective, I've definitely heard this. I'm not beautiful enough. I don't have that face shape. I can't pull it off. I don't have the confidence to do that. I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough to take this. I'm not strong enough to do this. I'm not strong enough to commit to this. I'm not talented enough. I don't have what it takes. I can't do what you can do. And the bottom line is we believe that there's something inevitably wrong with us, that we don't have what it takes. Somehow you do, and we don't. Whether we put that on someone that we know, someone that we don't know, someone in the media, someone that we're perceiving this way. But our perception will shift as we realize it's our perception. It is not reality. It's not the reality we can create. Let's put it that way. So how does this affect our actual existence? It is affecting our health, our longevity, how long we're living, how vibrant we're living, and our physiology. So your actual physical, mental, emotional physiology. It can show up as pain, stress. Stress yourself out because you can't get it. You become disconnected, possibly with yourself and others. Blame. It is my fault, but now it's going to be your fault. And personal suffering. So suffering on a level that we don't necessarily have to share, but sometimes we do share. It's a lot of blame to ourselves and then to others. It's disconnecting to ourselves and then others. It's creating stress for ourselves and then it's others, pain for us and then others. So it's definitely a very snowball effect. So the vital areas of healthy existence, this is from my perspective, from what I've seen in health coaching and also some of the modules from Ayurveda of what's called dinacharya, or these sacred rituals of life and existence and health and vitality. There's so many words for it in Ayurveda. The first thing that we talked about last week was sleep and rest, and food and nutrition. We went over both of those. And then today we're going to hit movement and growth and mindfulness and success thinking. So I found that these are the four big categories that once you have a really good grasp of how not to self-sabotage, right? How to self-care in these areas, your life changes. Everything changes. So let's talk about this. Where are you sabotaging your existence? So even if you weren't with us for the first or the initial segment, maybe just think about this. Like, okay, where do I have issues in my life that reoccur? Where is something that it just keeps happening the same way over and over again? It ruins it. Something is ruined. And maybe I realize that I ruin it. I ruin my diet. I ruin my sleeping pattern. I'm ruining my growth. So let's talk about movement and growth. So we are beings of growth. To do that, we must move beyond where we are to where we're going. And this never changes throughout our existence. Even when you're no longer in this physiology, hopefully you've seen that this never changes. We're going to keep moving and moving and moving from where we are to where we're going, or we cease to exist. lack of movement and growth. So last time we talked about the identifiers of how you were sabotaging your sleep and your rest and your body and your physiology and your food and your nutrition and your physiology. And today we're going to go a little bit deeper. So all change is not growth, as all movement is not forward. So all change may not necessarily be movement and growth. So some indicators that you are perhaps self-sabotaging your personal life movement and growth is you have difficulty focusing on goals or even setting goals. Moving past a repetitive concern or issue, you keep going back to it. You keep going back to it. Whatever it is, maybe it's attention, maybe it's love, maybe it's trust, maybe it's not enough money, right? Whatever it is, this moving back to this, that is a great indicator that that is a part that is impeding your movement and growth. Difficulty with living in the present moment or being lost in the past. You see this a lot in people who become so sentimental about things that they cannot move into the future. This also shows up in your physiology, both physical and mental, with flexibility. When you realize you're very inflexible to thoughts, so there's rigidity in the body. This morning when we taught this class, we talked about the chakras and how the chakras are these energy sites in the body that are really just the physical manifestation of the spiritual parts of us. And they're broken down in a way that our body can be receptive to them and we can use them as indicators. So for instance, people who have lower back pain, a lot of times I've seen that chakra that's either in their sacrum or even around their solar plexus or their root chakra, is the energy is off, and there's always a reason. Like there's always something they're holding there. And I've seen once that energy gets cleared, you can get a million massages, you can do physical therapy, you can do yoga, but there's a dysfunction there that until you deal with that spiritual aspect of yourself, that piece that you keep sabotaging, keep coming back to, it's going to maintain. And as soon as you begin to deal with it, it starts to clear, which just seems miraculous, but it's 100. I've seen it. It's 100% true. I've seen it every time. And once you accept that you have that power, it's incredible. It can also show up in things like anxiety, fear, mistrust, discomfort, depression, pain, and destructive patterns. So we used earlier the analogy of being in a very small subway bus and you can't really move. And maybe you get anxiety about not being able to move, or not being able to get out, or fear of what's going to happen, or mistrust. Is someone like touching me? Is someone trying to take something from me? Is someone going to hurt me? Discomfort, obviously, like I don't feel very good in this. And then over time that can become like a very depressed mood. Like it can actually impede your mental growth. It can also show up as pain in the body, like we talked about with the chakras, and destructive patterns, because that's why we're here. So some things that can combat this or can be very effective are knowing the powers of breath and knowing the powers of body movement and posture. So in yogic philosophy as well as Ayurveda, yogic philosophy comes from this practice of Ayurveda. The postures open up different components of your energy in your body and in your mind. So just take a moment wherever you are, whether you're listening to this in a car or you're seated with your notebook. Just take a moment to really feel into your body and see, like, how am I breathing? What is my posture? Do I have one leg up? Do I have one leg down? Are my feet on the ground? Is my back tall? Is my chest open? Are my collarbones wide? Am I slumping? And if you find yourself in a posture that maybe makes you feel depressed or, compressed, then sit up tall. Roll the shoulders back. Move the neck around. Shift in your seat a little bit. Take a deep breath. Maybe take another one. Because this all leads to recognizing where you are and where you want to be. So if where you are is this contracted state of I'm just shallow breathing, I'm kind of bent over, I'm getting ready to take notes, think about where you are in this moment and then where you want to be, because that can even be a self-destructive habit of how you show up. What do you really want to learn from this? What do you really want to grow from this? What kind of movement do you want to have in your mind and your body? All right, so our next piece of this is mindfulness and success thinking. Now, mindfulness, I feel like, is a word that a lot of people hear more and more and more, and especially in the yogic world, mindfulness. Having your mind in what you're doing. But then there's this other piece of it. So success thinking, like what would be successful for me? Is success for me happiness? Is success for me losing weight? Is success for me a loving, devoted relationship? Is success for me money? Is it a big house? Is it, having wonderful children? Whatever your success is, it's yours, right? And it starts with thinking an idea, you give it a try. Did it get you closer? Did it not? And then you'll notice this. Do again and again, keep on doing, and it brings you the success. And this is the pattern how all of this works. You think of something, you try it, and then you do it. And you get positive or negative feedback. And then you're going to do it again and again and again and again and again. We are creatures of habit. Our mind is designed to do what it's done before and to learn from what worked, what helped our existence. Unfortunately, what we're seeking, what our success is, can be somewhat misleading to the actions that actually get there, right? Like there's a mistake somewhere in this that we've realized is not the most efficient way. It's realized it's not getting us what we want, and yet we're still doing it and doing it and doing it. So what we're actually using as our success is not accurate. It's not what we really want. It's just what we've had before. And it's easy to know what that is, whether it's disappointment, whether it's someone leaving. That's not what we want. But that is what we're doing. So with this concept, mindfulness and success thinking, we are what we think we are. We create the reality we live in, and we live what we believe. So if you believe you're going to be successful in something, you are. Also, if you believe you're not going to be successful in something, you're not. We are what we think we are. If we think we are inept, if we think we are not good enough, we will be. We create it. But if we can start thinking something different, even maybe I could be successful if I did it this way, you will. This mechanism is ever changing. It ever changes throughout our existence so that we can progress forward. So what did we say about movement and growth? If we don't keep moving and growing, we cease to exist. Well, if we don't continue to change towards a success module, we stop progressing forward. Remember that you can move and you can grow, and it may not be up, it might be out. That might not serve you. We want to progress forward in our own success. So this is a wonderful little diagram that I found about mindful and mindful. I am not being mindful if my mind is full of what's not happening right now, right? There's two characters in this image. One is, her mind is full of the flowers and the sun and space and who she's with, and it's so wonderful. Look at all this. Where the other character is thinking about everything else. He's not even present with this little character. He's not even present with the sun or the flowers. His mind is full of something else. So when we're doing this, when we are filling our mind with things other than what's happening right now, then focus can definitely be a difficulty, right? Like, I don't know what he can focus on. Living in the present, so living in these moments with our loved ones. Also being able to see the future and see the truth. Because if you're stuck in the past, or you're stuck in the possible future, the fear of this future, then you're not going to accurately be able to see the possibilities in the future. You may even lose the ability to see the truth in the future. You know, you're having a conversation with someone and you don't hear everything they said because you're doing something else. And all of a sudden they say something and you're just like, what? What'd you just say? And now you've taken the whole thing out of context because you didn't actually hear everything that was going on. They weren't even directing that at you, you know, and it changes the whole mood of the conversation, and then it's going to change the mood of the relationship. Accepting your desires as possible. So we talked about that. You are what you think, right? If you are always cluttered with all this other stuff, then the last thing you're thinking about is what you really want and the fact that it's possible to get it, because you're so worried about what could happen, what hasn't happened, what did happen, what will happen. You might also have difficulty with doubt of yourself and of others, difficulty with fear, anxiety, change. Remember that not all change is going to be growth. It might just be change. It might be something different, but it might not get you anywhere. Discretion and discernment. So really being able to identify, like we're talking about with this, identifying what are our patterns. If you're clouded, you're not going to be able to be discreet about that. Like, I'm not going to be able to figure out, like, what is this and what is that? Or am I self-sabotaging or am I not? Is it this person or is it me? Painful memories is another big one that I've seen. People who it's so painful, they haven't been able to let go of the pain of that past, let alone, you know, move into a place where maybe those memories can mean something different. Grief is another one that I see a lot of. People are stuck in this grief. That is a mind full of the past and the possibilities of what's going to happen to them now and what then, instead of the, oh my gosh, you know, this was such an amazing experience that I had in my life. Connecting with others and also connecting with your highest attainment. So you'll see in our picture, the characters they're holding hands, but you know, one is very disconnected with the other. And with all this stuff going on in their head, how are they ever going to connect with their highest attainments? What do they really want in that success goal? So looking at this, we really want to think about the power of the mind. What we think we are, what we believe we are. A very wise client of mine once said, what we do not forgive, we will become. It was so profound. I even wrote it down. What we do not forgive in someone else, we will eventually become, because we're running away from it so hard we don't realize we're running towards it. And our mind, it's pretty much got a sole purpose, right? It's there to make sense of things. Our spirit is filtering these beautiful messages for us of what we can do in this world, what we brought ourselves here to do in this world, what are our options, what are our possibilities. And our mind is really there to make sense of that and like put it into a plan and be like, yeah, this is what we need to do. We're going to do this, this, and this. And our bodies are the vehicle, right? Like, think of the mind as the driver, but the map is truly the spirit. So we also want to think about that power of the spirit. I would say that I have seen that the power of the spirit is very discounted in a lot of people, especially if they consider their spirit something outside of them, if they consider their highest attainment outside of them, if they put too much dependence on another power to make that happen. They forget about the power that is within them. They forget that this spiritual power, we are spiritual beings living in a physical realm. We have complete control if we really choose to. So centering that energy through the mind in a way that we can really be in this physical moment, we can have complete control. And the power of yourself, power of you. You are the one who's sitting here today to learn this information and to use this information for yourself and for other people. So remembering that power comes from you. So now I'd like for everybody to, if possible, take out your journal, because we're going to do a little bit of journaling today. And I'm going to give everybody a few moments during this presentation to actually do this, because I find that if you don't do it now, it never happens. Maybe it does in your meditation. And this is a practice that I've done just recently in a meditation, getting prepared for this class. And it was so helpful. And so I'm going to share tonight, and any of you guys can share as well. So step number 1 is on your top of your paper. I want you to write, what is my self-destruct pattern? And think of self-destruct patterns as a low-grade sabotage. It's the first steps. It's the easy steps. It's the middle steps almost. And just start there. So what is my self-sabotage pattern? And bullet point them, number them, whatever you can see as like, yes, I do this. And then I do this. And then I do this. And then this happens. Let me give you a little bit of background music. We're going to take just a few minutes to just journal this down. And you might get to a point where you notice, okay, then the pattern just repeats itself over and over and over again. And that's okay. That's what I want you to see. We got another about 30 seconds. Just to get down some of these guidelines is really helpful. Then you can go back to this process whenever you need it. And remember, when it comes to these self-destructive patterns, it may show up in relationships, in your health, in your mental state, in your existence. And you may find this in all different places. So we just want to target the one that resonates the deepest for us. Like, oh yeah, I can absolutely identify this one. And then the next thing you're going to put on your page is, what is the one thing that I'm searching for? What did I want out of this scenario? The real thing. Did I want acceptance? Did I want love? Did I want trust? Did I want appreciation? So just take a moment to ask yourself that. And now I find it was really important for me to determine where that came from. What, where did that show up in my life? Now, where did that pattern start, really? Remember that it could have been your influencers, your teachers, your mentors of your potential. It could come from anywhere. But ask yourself, where did this come from? And just jot some notes down on that one. Or if you're not writing notes, maybe just think about it, sit with it. But I highly encourage everyone to write this stuff down. And then ask yourself, why is this belief not true? What's not true about it? Where did it come from? And why is it not true? And then finally, where can I change this pattern? So go back up to your bullet points or your numbered pattern. This is why it's great to write it down. Where does it shift? Where does it go over the edge? Where's that spot where I lose control? That the repetition happens. Find that place where you can become aware. And then we're going to review this. This we've gone over every webinar, but this you can really see how it all comes together. So your 4 steps of appraisal and change. So this is how we change the pattern. This is how we shift. This is how we reframe. We want to be aware of what is happening. So this is why we make that list of like, what am I doing? We can recognize that pattern and maybe even figure out where we are in it, no matter what you're doing, whether it's your love relationship or your health or your financial situation. What is your pattern? Where are you? Which step are you on? And then remember that you are what you think you are. You're in charge of what you think you're in charge of. You're in charge of the outcomes and the actions. And so that thing that you want, that success element, what is it? You know, was it attention? Was it love? It's probably not what you were shooting for, what you really want. What do you really want? And then consciously control what you do next. So I'm just going to share mine to give you guys an idea of kind of how this process works. This morning I shared one that I had done about my self-destruction habits in relationships. And I also did a journal entry of my self-destructive patterns when I'm happy. Why would anyone want to destroy happiness? Because you don't think you're good enough for it. Somehow you're inevitably flawed, right? There's no way that you could absolutely get the happiness that you want. So my self-sabotage pattern looks like I'm elated, I'm happy, I'm secure, I feel strong, I feel independent. And then I want to spend more and more time and resources with this happiness maker, this person that makes me happy, this thing that makes me happy, this hobby that makes me happy. And then I become comfortable in this happiness. It feels good. It feels like I want to just sit in it. And then I overly commit. Me personally, I commit so much to this happiness maker, really, whether it's a person or it's a certain yoga class or it's a certain workout or it's a certain food, right? It's a happiness maker for me. And I commit so much to it that I give up my self-care practices. I don't care about myself anymore because I'm so elated with this happiness. And then my next stage, which may take a while to even get to, is I notice my lack of self-care because I start seeing maybe the weight gain, or maybe I'm losing my sleep pattern, or I'm feeling really groggy, or I'm feeling really irritated. Like I'm noticing I'm not taking care of myself anymore. And then I start to resent the happiness maker and I start to pull back from it. I then naturally start to create dissonance to make space, whether it's with a person, or I start like little arguments, or I just stop seeing them, or I make space, or it's the habit, you know, it's the class. I just don't have time for it anymore. Or it's the food. I don't like that anymore. And then I create conflict to shift the momentum to fully pull away from it. I just get irritated, mad, and make fights. You know, I get a fight with the teacher, or I hurt myself so I can't do it anymore, which is such an interesting thing that we do to ourselves. And then, of course, I feel isolated and lonely. And I start to feel self-destructive. And I go into what happens when I'm not happy is the risk-taking mode, which was what I talked about this morning. And then eventually I reintroduce my self-care practices. Now that has, of course, taken years to get to. And I had to go through the self-care modules of Ayurveda to really figure out, like, what are the things that actually make me happy, not these fake happiness makers. Because in the end, that's what it was. I wasn't really getting what I wanted. I was looking outside of myself for happiness. So I realized when I went through this of where it came from. My mother. The more she devoted time and resources to my dad, the less she cared for herself. Then she resented it. Then she felt like she had to be in control, even when she gave it up. So it was this control factor of you give, and then you don't have anything left, and then you want to pull it back. And that never works. So why is this not true? If you are in control of your emotions, you can share them effectively. And if you're in control of your own happiness, you can share it effectively. If you're in control of your own love for yourself, then you can share it effectively. That's why it's not true. And then this little misbelief that I was telling myself is a part of me believes that I can't take care of myself and be in a supportive, happy relationship. How do I take care of them and the relationship and me all at the same time? There's not enough to go around. And this again came from the pattern I saw in my mother. So what would I need to do to change this? Verbalize my need for attention, my need for care. Really self-care support. So to be in a relationship with someone, for instance, verbalizing, hey, you know what, I'm going to need to go to bed at a certain time to get my maximum amount of rest, or I'm not going to be able to eat out all the time, or I love you, but this type of music really doesn't serve my ears, And then activating the self-care module, which is one of the things that I actually teach a whole class on now because it's become so incredibly important to me, is the self-care module of sleep and rest and food and nutrition and movement and growth and success thinking and mindfulness. And then explain that need for space and the need for time together and create both and love both. That's my change. That's what I need to do. And your pattern might look very different and might have its own little nuances, but that's just an example of how you can go through this. And then you make your game plan of like, okay, if I know that my self-care module is the most important thing to me, if I know that verbalizing is the most important thing, if I know speaking my truth or letting my emotions settle before I can say things, that is your action. That is your conscious control of what you do next. You want to consciously control that whenever you see this pattern come up. And for me, my awareness happened at step 5 with notice my lack of self-care. And I noticed this is what's happening. And before I ever start the resentment, oh, I'm not taking care of myself. Let me take care of myself before I create the dissonance and the conflict and the isolation. Why did it take me that many steps to get back to self-care? And relationships take practice, just like everything. We're not necessarily born with all the tools to get them perfect for every single person. And sometimes we are taught adverse relationship builders. But it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to be consciously in control and to make relationship and love and happiness your practice instead of self-destruction and self-sabotage. And then this is my ultimate key to success that I found. Give yourself what you want to receive. Self-care is the opposite of self-sabotage. Give yourself what you want to receive. Is it attention? Is it love? Is it strength? Is it happiness? Give that to yourself first. And once you have that, you can share it seamlessly, easily, and efficiently without losing yourself. You're in control of your own outcomes. You are the only one responsible for your life, not those who handed down something. And you can only change yourself. We can only change ourselves in any scenario. So now it's your turn. Anyone that's on the live chat, if you would like to raise your hand or you would like to stay anonymous, you can absolutely do that and just type a message in the chat page. If you'd like to share, and you want to be on video, I can call on you. Also, the option of you guys that are doing this recorded, there's my email address, and you're welcome to send me a picture of this if I can read your handwriting, or if you would like to discuss any of this. I do one-on-one health coaching, and your first session is always free. We can see if it's a good spot for us to work together, or if you need a referral into a different attribute maybe I'm not as specialized at. So however I can help you. And if no one wants to share, then I'll just let you know that next month on Tuesdays, again, August 14th and August 21st, I'm going to have a 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time new webinar called The Bird, the Monkey, and the Elephant, Ayurvedic Personalities and How to Build Relationships. So we're actually going to go into the attributes of these 3 characters and how you can recognize them in yourself and others. And what happens when you put them together? And how do you get your most effective relationships? These are not set in stone personality traits. They're what show up in different scenarios, as I have found. So I like to teach them from the animal method. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this webinar on why we burn ourselves. And hopefully all of us will stop burning ourselves and really start to look into how we can create happiness and longevity and health. This is Melody Rogers from the Seed of Life Alternative Health Collective. And thank you so much for joining me during this series webinar. If you need to get any of the previous ones, please email me or text message me and I can get you those. Otherwise, good luck on your journeys. Arrivederci.